John Wick action is a little different. It's a lot. Because Chad wants reality, he wants Rex, he wants it to feel real, he wants the beautiful violence. And so do we, and so do they.
Is John Wick realistic? The action is swift and brutal, largely captured without the aid of shaky-cam. Theatrics and monologuing are kept to a minimum, and every blow has the potential to be fatal. If an elite cabal of S-tier assassins did fight in the real world, it would probably go down like this, right? The thing is, we know what hand-to-hand slugfests between the world's greatest martial artists look like, and John probably wouldn't last too long in the octagon. But on the screen, his marriage of MMA moves and Tom Clancy tactics was unlike anything action fans had seen before his 2014 debut. Some folks call it authenticity or believability. Film majors call it verisimilitude. I call it making you believe that Keanu Reeves can kill 3 dudes with a bleeping pencil.
Pencil!
One way to do that, put some of cinema's greatest martial artists directly in his path of vengeance. Artists like Donnie Yen.
Plan is out.
This international superstar earned his room at the Continental through years of training and study. Drawing on his MMA expertise and the philosophy of Bruce Lee, Yen revolutionized action cinema and set the high table for John Wick and other films that followed. This is John Wick, Donnie Yen, and Bruce Lee, the art of realistic movie combat. We begin with Bruce Lee and Jeet Kundo. In 1964, Lee lived in Oakland, California, teaching at a martial arts studio and gathering fame for his legendary one-inch punch. A rival fighter named Wong Jock Man challenged him to a duel, and Lee accepted. Now, no one quite agrees on how it all went down. There are multiple biopics depicting the battle and an entire feature-length film devoted to it, all with wildly different takes. So let's go with this one. Wong thought of the fight as a demonstration between rival schools, his own northern Shaolin style versus the Wing Chun that Lee learned from the real-life Ip Man. Wong offered a handshake and refused to use his deadly kicks for the exhibition, but Lee came to destroy. In his own words, he chased down his opponent and wailed on the back of his head until his hands hurt. Out with tradition and form, long live Jeet Kundo. Inspired by the duel, Bruce Lee created Jeet Kundo as a martial arts philosophy defined by simplicity. Where the rules and limitations of traditional disciplines were too strict, Jeet Kundo absorbs the most effective techniques and discards all else, casting off what is useless, in Lee's words, freed from the bondage of styles, patterns, and doctrines.
I don't believe in system, Mr. Longstreet, nor in method. And without system, without method, what's to teach?
Jeet Kundo means the way of the intercepting fist. No wasted movement, no excess energy, just the direct expression of one's feelings. Feelings like pride in your martial arts ability, or your desire for championship gold. Feelings like rage over a murdered beagle puppy. The fight scenes in John Wick clearly have bigger stakes than a San Francisco street smackdown. Wick is out to kill, and there are hundreds of bloodthirsty goons willing to oblige him. There is no referee. Still, Jeet Kundo's freedom through efficiency is evident in every meticulous action.
Then, if you wish to survive, what do you do?
I don't know.
Bite. Bite! Are we not animals?
Keanu's chaotic killing sprees dance between fisticuffs, firearms, and everything in between. Anything is a weapon as long as it works, even if it's a library book. Do whatever it takes to get this sword through that sternum. And if you think you've nailed that henchman, drop a round in his dome and make sure. When John Wick premiered in 2014, it was a welcome deconstruction of over-the-top action film extravagance. It cast off the genre's contrived set pieces and endless explosions and kept the heroic bloodshed, tactical espionage action, and impeccable fight choreography. Fight choreography pioneered by legends like Bruce Lee and Donnie Yen. Donnie Yen was practically born to be a master martial artist. His mother, Bo Sim Mark, is a Tai Chi grandmaster who is hailed as one of the most influential martial artists of all time. Yen's family moved to Boston when he was 11, and he spent his days training at his mother's school, getting jacked at the Chinatown Boys Club, and brawling on the mean streets like his idol, Bruce Lee. Yen left Boston to study martial arts with the Beijing Wushu team, where he earned a 6th-degree black belt in Taekwondo. On the way home, Donnie stopped in Hong Kong and hooked up with Yen Wu-ping, the god of fight choreography behind films like Drunken Master, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and so many more. Yen Wu-ping was looking to replicate the success of his movies with Jackie Chan, and he decided that Donnie was the next big thing. He took the young martial artist under his wing and kicked off Donnie's career in Hong Kong cinema with 1984's Drunken Tai Chi. Donnie Yen's athleticism, skill, and charisma are readily apparent in his early work, like soloing a frenzied mob of Shaolin warriors in Iron Monkey. His first clash with former classmate Jet Li in Once Upon a Time in China 2 foretold their later rematch in 2002's Hero. He'd even step into his hero's shoes in 1995 with a TV version of Bruce Lee's Fist of Fury. "I will not let Bruce Lee down," he said. After his early success, however, Yen's fortunes faded. In 1997, he started his own production company, Bullet Films, but the 2 flops it produced nearly wiped him out financially. At the same time, the world of combat was rapidly changing, and classic kung fu wasn't going to cut it anymore. Imagine if John Wick was made in the early 90s. Western action films were mainly focused on one-liners and bombastic destruction, and after a brief love affair in the 70s and 80s, Hollywood was largely oblivious to martial arts action, outside of kids' movies, straight-to-video slop, and the odd Jean-Claude Van Damme flick. Can you picture Steven Seagal lethargically lumbering his way through the Russian mob? Young Keanu Reeves was no stranger to action.
Yeah? Well, I'm taller.
But he largely spent the decade working on his dramatic chops until he took the red pill. The world was simply not ready for the kind of action John Wick would present. Its authenticity would have rung hollow in any other era because the art of fighting was about to undergo a revolution, built on the basics of Bruce Lee's teachings that would have a lasting impact on martial arts, Donnie Yen, and all of action cinema. And it was called MMA. The modern sport of mixed martial arts developed independently around the world for decades. In Brazil, the Gracie family challenged fighters to test their jiu-jitsu skills in everything-goes Vale Tudo fights. In Japan, pro wrestlers like Antonio Inoki and murder grandpa Minoru Suzuki helped transform fake puroresu matches into the bone-crunchingly real sport of Shuto. In Hong Kong, Chinese immigrants from hundreds of martial arts schools battled for supremacy in rooftop showdowns and street fights that produced Bruce Lee and his hybrid Jeet Kundo. In the United States, the first Ultimate Fighting Championship tournament was held in 1993, live on pay-per-view from a half-full hockey arena in Denver, Colorado. The UFC was billed as a test to prove the superior fighting style, which means early shows are filled with some extremely strange matchups. I mean, where else outside of an arcade can you see a sumo wrestler take on a savant kickboxer? Further tournaments saw strategies become refined and styles blend together. It wasn't enough to be a world-class striker, grappler, or submission specialist. In MMA, you had to be all three. In time, the most effective elements of martial arts like jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, and Greco-Roman wrestling combined to form an entirely new style that embodies the pure practicality of Jeet Kundo. The best fighter, said Bruce Lee, is not a boxer, karate, or judo man. The best fighter is someone who can adapt to any style, to be formless.
Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
UFC exploded in popularity in the early 2000s. Monster-chugging, affliction-shirted fight fans tuned in by the millions, and MMA evolved from a sideshow into a sport. Donnie Yen was paying attention. By the turn of the millennium, martial arts action was all the rage thanks to his old mentor Yen Wu-ping's work in The Matrix, giving Yen the opportunity to serve as fight choreographer on films like Guillermo del Toro's Blade 2. As his influence grew in the West, he in turn absorbed everything he could about MMA and infused it in his own philosophy. "I had studied so many traditional martial arts styles," he said, "but MMA actually brought an answer to all martial art. Does it work?" He returned to Hong Kong and brought his new ideas to the screen, two films that had a massive impact on action cinema. In 2005's SPL, also called Killzone, Yen's classic skills are on full display in the iconic knife versus baton fight against Wu Jing. But it's the subsequent battle with Sammo Hung that changed martial arts movies forever. After opening with traditional wushu strikes and blocks, Yen shoots in for a takedown and does his best to keep Hung on the ground, mixing ground and pound with rear naked chokes and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu arm bars. 2007's Flashpoint took the concept even further. His 7-minute beatdown of Colin Shu is a smorgasbord of MMA techniques, from triangle chokes and heel hooks to forbidden judo throws like the leg-shattering Kani Basami. There's plenty of wire-fu and plausibility throughout the films, but Yen's MMA moves lend the fight's authenticity to an audience that had grown accustomed to what actual combat looks like, and his influence quickly spread beyond the cinema. Modern fighters like Zhang Weili, the first Chinese champion in UFC history, credit Yen's films for getting them into the sport. Meanwhile, filmmakers around the world realized it was time to step up their game, culminating in the combat styling that came to define John Wick. Keanu Reeves began his martial arts journey with The Matrix, but there would be no instant download of elite skills for John Wick.
I know Kung Fu.
He spent 4 months learning judo and jiu-jitsu for the first film, and for the sequels he embarked on a grueling boot camp with BJJ experts and mixed martial artists, the Machado brothers. And the on-screen results speak for themselves. John Wick is not a wuxia superhero who effortlessly glides through the air. He struggles to apply techniques and scrambles to keep his opponents under control and transition to a more dominant position. When he's not advancing and shooting, John is grappling, wailing on his enemies with a flurry of knee strikes and using a grab bag of MMA throws to get his opponents to the ground, snap their limbs, and set them up for a quick headshot that is definitely not sanctioned by the Nevada State Athletic Commission. Fight choreographer Jonathan Eusebio tried to root the action to something that's real and applicable. The function of a technique, he said, has to be recognized as something efficient and justified in its application. And his inspiration? None other than Jeet Kundo, which taught him to assess his actors' physical attributes to determine how they'd move and fight. Like Bruce Lee and Donnie Yen before him, John Wick's fighting style absorbs what's useful and rejects what is useless. As for Donnie Yen himself, he became an international superstar upon the 2008 release of Ip Man, an action-packed saga exploring the life of the man who trained Bruce Lee. The subsequent star power led to roles in big-budget blockbuster franchises like Star Wars, XXX, Mulan, and now John Wick. He plays John Wick's old friend Kane, a blind assassin forced out of retirement to hunt down his old buddy Baba Yaga. Decked out in a killer 60s suit inspired by, you guessed it, a young Bruce Lee, Yen is lending his credibility to the John Wick franchise to create a cinematic action experience that is equally as authentic as it is entertaining.